At this point, I just want the Houston Astros to get out of town. The Marlins have been uncompetitive in this series.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I'm a diehard Marlins fan, and I've podcasted about the team for the last 4 seasons. You can find me on X at Jeremiah Geiger 2, and thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the Astros' complete domination so far in this series against the Marlins. Cal Quantrill got shelled. It looked like April Cal, not July Cal. The one positive that's a big takeaway, though, is Jakob Marsee. He's been on absolute fire to start his major league career and hit his first career homer on Tuesday. And then the draft picks. There's a couple of assignments I want to get into, talk about Iva Arquette, Brandon Compton, and then a new acquisition. The Marlins claimed Joey Weimer off of waivers. They optioned him to AAA. I haven't talked about him yet, but I do think there's some positive metrics that the Marlins can work with and tools they can get behind to try to develop him as a player. But let's talk about this Houston Astros series, because let me tell you, it has been miserable to watch. You're coming off of the excitement and the joy of this Yankees sweep. You're on top of the world. And then 2 games later, it just feels like a gut punch. And I don't want to see the Houston Astros again. They're a good team, credit to them, but the Marlins are just playing bad, uncompetitive baseball. In the first 2 games of this series, they've been outscored 15-5. That's numbers that you see in high school baseball. You run up against a team that has more talented kids, and you're just not cut out to beat them. That's what this feels like. And it's frustrating, man. Cal Quantrill was absolutely awful in this game. He gave up 7 earned runs in 4 1/3, 9 hits, 2 strikeouts. He walked 3. He was just getting pieced up by this Astro lineup, and it's a good lineup. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they have some absolute dudes. Jose Altuve. How about Jesus Sanchez being on fire in this one? He had a couple of hits, including a very impressive hustle double against his former team. You'll love to see that from Sanchi, but not at the Marlins' expense. And this game felt, again, like Monday's, over before it started. And of course, you hold out hope that you're going to have this comeback victory like you did last Friday against the Yankees, but it just wasn't happening. The Astros were up 7-2. They end up winning the game 7-3. Like I said, outscoring this team by 10 runs through the first 2 games. And that's not a recipe for success at all. They're getting outclassed. You have one more game against these guys on Wednesday. That's going to be Jansen Junk versus Spencer Arrighetti. So, I mean, I want to see this. I want to see the Marlins at least salvage 1 game. Now you're 55-57. You're 2 games under 500. Immediately after you climbed back to 500, all the momentum leaves. And it's a sickening feeling. It's just so frustrating because this team was playing such good baseball and now they're not. It looks like the team that was 24-40 all over again. I have a couple bones to pick regarding the lineup decisions. Eric Wagaman. Let me start with Eric Wagaman. Ironically, Wagaman homered in this game to make it 7-3 after the Astros were comfortably ahead, and there was little chance of the Marlins staging a late comeback. Doesn't that seem like Wagaman does that from time to time? He'll hit a home run when the team is down by a lot of runs. It feels like that Chris Paul meme I posted on Twitter earlier. Chris Paul hits a big three to cut the lead down to 42. And that's with Eric Wagman and his home runs. On the season, though, he's got an OPS of 627. What are we doing here? Why is Eric Wagman continuously getting at bats for the major league team? It doesn't make any sense to me. And the home run, of course, is going to buy him more time because that's what it does. You're not going to DFA him right after this game. But, Javier Sanoja, for crying out loud, has a higher OPS of 682. And Sanoja, although he's hit a power surge with 3 homers over the last 3 games played, nobody would mistake him as a slugger. So the experiment, it failed with Matt Mervis earlier in the season. He was hot in April. You end up DFAing him. You end up releasing him this morning. Today, he was released by the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. Nathan Martorella got promoted from AA to AAA. So Matt Mervis isn't even with the organization anymore. And Eric Wagman is still starting and taking up at-bats on the major league roster. I'm over it. I'm over the whole Wagman experiment. I get it. You brought him in free agency, but at least send him down. At least give somebody else a chance for everyday reps. You just brought up Troy Johnston, and Troy Johnston didn't even appear in this game. Just sat on the bench. That's not a recipe for success. That is not how a young player to the major league level, at least. Troy Johnston's a veteran of the minors, but the major leagues is a new experience for him. And now he's sitting on the bench half the time at the expense of a failed free agency experiment. Wash your hands, remove yourself from the situation. Just no more Eric Wagman. I say DFA him. That's my opinion on the situation. I'm tired of watching him get at bats. And Cal Quantrill, 7 runs, dude, through 4 1/3 inning. That's terrible. You got blasted. 9 hits, 3 walks. It was uncompetitive baseball. You weren't giving yourselves a chance to win. That was the Cal Quantrill that we saw in Philadelphia back in April. That Quantrill's been great the last couple of months. Not in this one. The Astros lineup did whatever they wanted when they were up in the box. Just pathetic performance by this team over the last 2 days. There's no way to sugarcoat it. That's why I'm saying it's so important that they manage to salvage a game tomorrow on Wednesday. Because then you're going to Atlanta. And Atlanta is not a fun team to play if you're the Marlins. Marlins fans know this very well. And I understand that, the Atlanta's not doing well as a whole this season. It doesn't matter to me. I don't feel comfortable or confident ever going against the Braves at their house. Not saying that the Marlins can't do it, but there's some voodoo over there. We've seen crazy things happen with the Braves, and the Braves would like everything in their power. They're going to do everything to beat the Marlins and really put a nail in the coffin for the Marlins playoff hopes. If the Marlins, lose 3 out of 4 to the Braves, God forbid, it's going to be very hard for this team to end up in a wild card spot, which I still am going to hold out hope for. I still think this team is in a position to make a run, but they have to get hot again. They have to play better baseball as a whole. And one of the players in particular, though, that is a bright spot over these last couple of games and to start his major league career has been Jakob Marsee. He's been electric and an instant impact for the Marlins, and hopefully it continues moving forward. I'm going to talk about Marsee and the revelation that he's been for this offense right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Gameday Hue, and so is this hat that I'm wearing. For Marlins fans like me, this one hits the mark. Gameday Hue makes clean, no-logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every professional and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the golf course, or anywhere in between. The gear is subtle, stylish, and you can still rep the Marlins. The hat pairs perfectly with your usual gear. It doesn't replace the Marlins logos. It just adds to the lineup. And it's the kind of hat, it's the kind of gear that you can rep your team without screaming it to the world. Because you got the blue, you got the black, and I'm wearing this red shirt with it. To me, that's Marlins colors. And it's not just hats. Check out their split shade gloves, made for the golf course, or the perfect gift for the fan that has everything. And right now you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the time to load up. Let your colors talk because colors speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com, code MLB15. Thank you to all the everyday listeners out there making Locked On Marlins a part of your daily routine. Jakob Marsee has been awesome for the Marlins. And just to start his major league career, I don't think there's been a better electric piece to this offense since Agustin Ramirez. When Ramirez came up from AAA and had that series against the Reds, everybody was on the Agustin Ramirez hype train, or the Gus Bus, as he's called. And that's how everybody should feel right now about Jakob Marsee. The amount of professional at-bats that he puts together, and then, of course, his ability to just drive the baseball. He had 14 homers through 97 games in AAA this season. He just hit his first homer on Tuesday. It's kind of funny because he drove it to right field. It landed in the Astros bullpen, and one of the Astros players or coaches picked it up and tossed it into the stands to an Astros fan. So there was some negotiations over there on the Marlins side to try to get Jakob Marsee his first home run ball. But Marsee's been great. I mean, he walks. He has a great eye at the plate. He drew another walk in Tuesday's game. I believe he has 5 walks so far through the first 5 games of his career. I'm gonna double check that just to make sure. I mean, you look at him as a player. He's got the speed. He's got defense. To me, he's a clear upgrade over Jesus Sanchez. And I was right. He's got 5 walks and 6 hits to start his career, including 5 extra base hits. Only one of those hits has been a single, and that was in today's game. He drove in the first run. It was a base hit the opposite way to put the Marlins on the board. 3 doubles, a triple, a homer. And of course, he's not going to finish the year hitting 500, but it doesn't matter. You see the talent just jump off the page. And it, to me, even though Jesus Sanchez had a great series and is having a great series against the Marlins, we're going to see what he does Wednesday. That's an upgrade. Jakob Marsee should be the everyday center fielder for the rest of the season. And heading into 2026, I am so excited for what he's going to do over a long period of time. The defense. He had a web gem in Monday's game. Sweet diving catch. I think it was 30%, 15% catch probability, if I'm not mistaken. 15%. Sweet diving catch on a what should have been a base hit. He takes it away. Got speed on the base paths. He's going to get his steals. Let it come in time. And then the power. Doubles, gap-to-gap power, hits home runs. What's not to like about Jakob Marsee? And then to add on top of that is that plate discipline. He looks like he's been in the majors already for 5 years, and it's been 5 games. I can't wait for Marsee, and the impact that he's having already can't be understated. I just can't wait to see what's going to happen long term. But I think the Marlins got a real great player in their system and now in the major leagues. Looking back at that Luis Arias trade, I was upset. I was very upset that the Marlins traded Arias. And I don't think anybody should be upset now. Now we're seeing the results. You still have guys in the minor leagues. Dylan Head was the centerpiece of that trade. He's still in the low minors. But Jakob Marsee, who is kind of a secondary piece, has shown huge strides in his development and is now on the major league roster, hitting rockets, making robberies of base hits. He's a stud. Absolute stud. And I think it's another piece that you can look forward to as being part of the Marlins core. That's what I said going into the season was wins and losses aside, this season's about development and who is identifying who's going to be part of the next Marlins playoff team, of the Marlins core. And I think we've had positive progress in identifying multiple players. Kyle Stowers, superstar. Augustin Ramirez, he's a masher. Yeah, he has defensive questions. So what? He's a masher. He's going to be in this lineup for years. And now you have Jakob Marsee, where you can dream upon that same potential, where Jakob Marsee's on the Marlins for a long time. And that's great. Those are three players that at the beginning of the season, you didn't expect this type of success. We all thought that Augustin Ramirez was going to come up. I don't think we would have said he was going to have this big of an impact in the lineup. I mean, he's leading the National League for rookies in multiple categories. He already has 17 home runs. So this team is still exciting. And although this series has been frustrating, Jakob Marsee is the most obvious player to point to and say, there's something I can hang my hat on, even in a couple of losses. Yes, you've lost the series. You won 6 in a row before that. You're still playing good baseball for the majority of the last month and a half, 2 months. Let's right the ship. Let's get back into it and start playing competitive baseball again. And it starts tomorrow. What is Jakob Marsee going to do for the last game of this series? That's what I'm excited for. The Marlins are still in a position where they can win, and they're right where they want to be in terms of what's ahead of them. Until that E is written next to their name in the standings, then I'm going to sit on this podcast and I'm going to say, keep on winning, and every single game matters, because it does. I'm not going to let 2 games change that, but I do think it's very important to right the ship now, especially heading into Atlanta this weekend. Heading on to the minor league side, the Marlins assigned some of their draft picks, if not all of them, their initial assignments. And I'm going to focus on a couple of them, and also a new acquisition, Joey Weimer, who was acquired via waivers from the Kansas City Royals. And I'm excited to see what the Marlins can do with Joey Weimer. That's coming up right after this. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If you've ever looked at your spending and you realize that it's adding up a little bit more quickly than you'd like it to, well, then Monarch Money is the perfect app for you, because it's going to help you budget your finances, and then you're going to be able to save more money. Everybody likes more money. So take control of your finances with Monarch. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Locked On Marlins is on YouTube, so if you're watching, hit that subscribe button, but it's also on all the major podcast platforms, so you can listen to the show on the go. Joey Weimer was a Royals player who was in the minor leagues. He's an outfielder. Marlins just got him off of waivers. To be honest, I didn't know a ton about him, but I was looking at something that Fish on First posted via Prospect Savant. Good follow. He posts, StatCast metrics for minor league players. And I'm taking a look at this Savant page, if you will, for Joey Wiemer, and it has me excited to see what the Marlins are going to do. And it's something that I view as a project. And the reason I say that is because Joey Wiemer, he's got a good eye at the plate, 57th percentile in walk percentage at 11.2. He barrels the ball, 71st percentile, and he hits the ball hard. 90th percentile EV. He's at 66th percentile rather in the 90th EV. He pulls the ball in the air at 21.5%. That's good for the 71st percentile. His max EV this season, 109.7 miles an hour. So there's tools to work with, and also his speed. He's a very speedy guy who's going to create plays for you on the bases, and that's a tool that you really can't teach. You have plus speed, then these other tools you're hitting, that's going to supplement that. And so what the Marlins idea is, and he's been optioned to Jacksonville, is get him in the system, see what he's got, and just develop him. Throughout the minor leagues this season, it was rough. He was hitting 182, an OBP of 291, OPS of 603, but he's made his major league debut. He has 13 career major league homers, mostly with the Milwaukee Brewers. So it's an intriguing player that the Marlins can try to work with and see if there's anything there. Remember, Kyle Stowers had a ton of problems last season at the major league level, and he was somebody that we weren't even sure should or would make the opening day roster, and look what's happened. And I'm not going to say, Joey Weimer's the next Kyle Stowers. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is that there's positive things to look at and see what your player development system can bring. It's not blue all the way across the board. Like I said, he's barreling the ball. He's pulling it in the air. He has the ability to hit the ball hard. He's got really good speed. So when you combine all that, that's something that you can work with. And that's something that, heading into the last couple months of the season, it's to be determined, of course, if he'll appear in a major league game this year. But it's worth a flyer. What's to lose? There's nothing to lose with Joey Wiemer. Moving on to the draft picks, though, it's been an interesting development over the last month or so since these guys have, it's been less than that. I can't remember right now exactly when the draft was, but yeah, it was the All-Star break. So a few weeks ago, Ivan Arquette has been assigned to high A Beloit. I didn't necessarily think he would start out at high A, but I think that's a positive. I think if Ivan Arquette can dominate that level, get a quick promotion to Double A, and move his way through the ranks, then he's going to be a Miami Marlin sooner rather than later. And that's somebody who you can look at for the future as a high impact bat. Now, I was watching some of his games, or some of the game earlier, which would be his debut, and the last time I checked, he was 0 for 4. Brandon Compton was the other player, the higher draft pick, that got assigned to high A. Also, the Marlins' second rounder. So both their first rounder and second rounder were assigned to high A Beloit. Brandon Compton, of course, crazy exit velocities at the combine, got a ton of raw power. Can he translate it into the game? That's the big question, right? Can the Marlins develop Brandon Compton and get him to a point where, he's not swinging at everything. He's making those good plate decisions and swing decisions, And then, of course, that raw power is going to play at the major league level. That's the question for these guys. Ivar Arquette, I think the floor is fairly high for him, and I'm excited to see what he does. And then, of course, the big question for me is, does he stick at shortstop? He had a real nice play in the game on Tuesday for Beloit, in which he just leaped up and robbed the base hit. I mean, that's just athleticism, that's height, and that's something that you can't necessarily teach. Compton got a base hit in his first at-bat of his professional career. Ripped the base hit right up the middle. It drove in a run. So an RBI single to kick off his professional career. And there's a lot to be excited for. Drew Farrow in low A, 3 hits in his first professional action. He's an infielder out of Florida State, and there's always room for competition and growth. You know, when it comes to the major league draft, you don't know who's going to show up and who's not going to show up, because it's not like the NFL or the NBA where they're just plug and play guys right off the bat. It's about development. And so, of course, with college bats, you could argue they have not a higher chance of making the majors, but they're a step ahead in the development of a high school kid, because they're closer to major league ready than a high schooler is in terms of the time needed to develop and work through what they need to work through. And that's what the Marlins did. They went college heavy. Drew Farrow in low A, going 3 for 4 in his professional debut. That's exciting. Again, you don't know where the stars are necessarily going to come from the draft. Tarek Skubal was a 9th round draft pick. 9th rounder. And now he's about to win his 2nd Cy Young award in a row. He's one of the best pitchers. He's my favorite pitcher in baseball. He's a star, superstar. They can come from all over, and that's what makes your scouting department so important. And then, of course, your development side of things. For years, the Marlins have struggled with developing. Now we're going to see these guys playing games. Let's see them develop at a pod as a whole. As the class as a whole, I want to see being developed, not just, 1 or 2 guys. What was it? Nick Fortes is the only player left from the 2018 draft class left with the Marlins. Like that can't happen. And I don't think that's going to happen under Peter Bendix and Frankie Pilieri and this new front office, this new plan in place from top to bottom. I think this team's going to be focused, and the organization as a whole is going to be tuned into developing, not just on the major league side of things, but your draft picks, your trades, the prospects you get, everything is the goal is to be a well-oiled machine and a year in and year out competitive organization. And we're seeing results. Like I said, yes, the Marlins, it's been a rough couple of games. It's been very frustrating to watch. But there's still baseball to be played, folks. Last I checked, we're in early August. It's not October, and it ain't over till the fat lady sings, is the quote. This team is exciting. They're fun to watch. Yeah, they had a couple of rough games, but let's get back on track. Like I said, right the ship. And it starts with Jansen Junk versus Spencer Arrighetti. It's a matinee game or an early afternoon game. As I'm sitting here on the West Coast, I'm thinking it's 1:40 my time. But I want to see this team just roar back. Yesterday, Monday's game was rough. Tuesday's game, rough. And that happens in baseball. That's going to happen over 162. It's how you rebound. How about we get an Augustine Ramirez home run? Kyle Stowers smashes one over the right field fence, or maybe goes Oppo Taco, and let's get this thing rolling again. Because the weekend, oh man, the hated rivals, the Atlanta Braves, we're going to their place. And I know the Braves aren't having a good season by any means, but they want to play spoiler, and they'd love nothing more than to beat these Marlins and just strip all hope of a wild card berth away. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. I appreciate you guys for listening or watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go Fit.